Let's understand the legal dynamic of those over 80 men who are appearing in court this afternoon. We're now joined by Ian Allie, criminal law expert. Thank you very much, Ian, for availing yourself this afternoon. I do wonder what you make of over 80 men appearing in court today in terms of the process and how it unfolds from here on out. Please talk us through that.
Thank you, Dudu. Whenever there's an arrest, a charge laid, and an arrest made, there's always an opportunity for further and better investigations to take place. The only danger that I can see in a situation like this is what are the people being charged with? When you have 84 people being charged, are they being charged in terms of the rape and the violence? Are they being charged in respect of contravention of the Immigration Act and being here illegally? The problem that happens is that that becomes the waters around that have become very muddy of what the basis is for their arrests. And that's when one needs to be very cautious about how you go about prosecuting it. Because just because the person is suspicious due to their illegal residency here doesn't automatically make them a violent criminal. The same time is you got to look at what the public interest is when dealing with that and the sensitivity, because obviously there's been a history at the moment with xenophobic attacks and attacks on foreigners and the issues of foreigners working in South Africa and coming to South Africa. So one also has to bear in mind the sensitivity around the subject when making arrests of these nature and making sure that at this present moment there's the best possible evidence to maintain the reason for their arrests.
You speak of best possible evidence, and as you speak, we are showing our viewers some of the visuals that we were able to get from Krugersdorp over the weekend, where what we assume are personnel from the forensics department on the scene. They are wearing civilian clothes. They're not clad in PPE. It's only gloves that they have in their hands. And weekend reports on the newspapers also pointing out that some journalists had to call the police to say, come back, there's more evidence for you to get. And this evidence is then also collected in full view of the cameras. How much of a complication, if at all, could this present in terms of the state's case?
Oh, it can be an absolute nightmare because there's contamination on the crime scene. There's there's the chronological chains of command of evidence, and that can be compromised in a situation like that. It can become an absolute mess from the state's perspective, and it might also be a danger of the state taking on a premature shotgun approach, albeit that you want to, that in an attempt to, if one could say, bust crime, the police might want to have a philosophy of to make an omelette, you need to crack some eggs. But at the same time, you need to buy those eggs from the market before you crack them. And what may end up happening here is if the people are found to be unlawfully arrested, there's going to be massive litigation ongoing with the state bearing the costs of those unlawful arrests. So the problem is that the police should ensure that there is the best possible way of dealing with it, not walking around and contaminating and having other people advise them and investigate and have community investigations. That's the last thing that they should in actual fact be saying, and that's the worst type of evidentiary approach that you can take to a situation like this.
Does the kind of scene actually matter? As we are showing our viewers and as we pointed out, you can see the forensic personnel in civilian clothing. This is a mine dump, and it's comprised of sand, and so wind could have blown, does that matter? Will that be a factor at all in this case?
That's something that's got to be dealt with at a trial, and the people who are going to be formally charged at the end of the day and tried, just because they're starting off with 84 people at the moment, doesn't automatically mean that they're going to continue with all 84. And there might be exonerating evidence and evidence that excludes certain people. There might also be certain representations where cases are stronger against some than others. There's always the necessary elements that are, and wind and sun and rain and all of that contribute to disrupting the evidence. But it also doesn't help when it's investigated in a very haphazard manner. I can't obviously see to the extent of that, but that can give any defense a very good basis to work off on saying that the chain of evidence was compromised.
Very quickly for us, Ian, just from the work that you do outside of this case, when somebody is accused of rape, what right do they have, especially if they feel like they are innocent and maybe later on during the trial it is actually proven that they are innocent, or are you just presumed guilty?
Okay, that's actually very, very difficult, because as an attorney, there's automatically supposed to be that you're presumed innocent until found guilty. But unfortunately, especially with sexual offences, there's a lot of other complications, because there's issues when both a person is known and unknown, and we've heard of date rape cases and miscommunicated consent and assumed consent and all of that and all of those type of things on TV and on the news. But the problem is it becomes very, very difficult, because if somebody is not acquitted, and even if they are acquitted, the public perception is still there. So when it comes with dealing with it, it's got to be all avenues of, in actual fact, got to be covered, all the way from the interaction to the DNA to whatever evidence support is in support and for the state as well as for the accused. And if it is shown that the state was never in a position to be able to be sure of a prosecution, there might be, or alternatively it comes out that it's a lie, more when it comes out that there's a lie surrounding it, then the accused does have an opportunity to pursue malicious prosecution, alternatively unlawful arrest, in a civil forum for it, and go to court to try and claim monetary compensation for being falsely accused.
Ian, thank you very much for availing yourself this afternoon. Ian Allie is a criminal law expert.